This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel, broadcasting remotely. We spend a lot of time talking about education on this show. Today, we look at the role of skilled trades programs as a pathway to a career. This recession is not like the others. If you focus on the college track, students, especially millennials, have a lot of student debt, but that doesn't mean they end up with a college degree or a job that supports them well. Coming up, we'll hear what kinds of investments the Biden administration should make to help in the pandemic recovery. Resources have plummeted in higher ed, but does that mean the country should only focus on investing in traditional four-year programs? Society tells us a four-year degree is the key to a stable, lucrative job, but you can get that in a skilled trade. Now, do you work in skilled trades, or do you have a family member who does? We want to hear from you. You can join us, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. I want to welcome our first guest to the show. Dave Arnott is head of the Plumbing and Heating Department at AI Prince Technical High School, that's in Hartford, and he's the Heating Curriculum Chair for the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System. Dave, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Lucy. How are you?
I'm doing well. And also with us is a student from Prince Tech, Qahdir Muhammad. He's a senior in the plumbing and heating trade. Qahdir, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I'll start with you, Dave. We've talked about technical high schools on the show, but it's been a while. So if you could tell our listeners a little bit about how these tech schools are part of Connecticut public school systems and a little bit more about the programs that are offered.
Sure. So we're a four-year high school where students can come and choose between. So we at Prince Tech have 14 trades that the students can choose from, ranging from plumbing and heating, all the construction trades, to culinary arts, hairdressing, and bioscience, environmental. They can go through an exploratory process where they choose a shop that they want, and they spend the 4 years within that shop learning that craft or that trade. I know for plumbing and HVAC and electrical, the students gain hours towards their apprenticeship as well. For when they graduate, they can go into being a plumbing and heating apprentice, and they do get credited 1,500 hours towards that process.
So that sounds like a good deal. So while they're learning traditional subjects like math and English, they're learning these trades. And as you mentioned, they're graduating not only with a high school degree, but also credits that help them towards apprenticeship.
Correct. So they do go through a process where they rotate between shop cycles. So they may do a 7, 9, or a 10-day cycle within their trades, and then they'll go to the academics for roughly the same amount of time, 7 or 9 days, and then they'll come back and they rotate back and forth throughout the school year.
I understand you're a product of Connecticut's technical high school system, and you worked in the field that you teach. So tell us a little bit about your career, Dave.
Sure. So I did graduate from one of our 17 technical high schools, and I've been in plumbing and heating since the day I graduated. I grew up in a family business and went into the field and have had a great career, and decided to teach back in 2009. I came to the system, back into the system to teach, and it's been the best career I've ever had.
Do you find that a lot of your students, they have family members that are in skilled trades, and that's what attracts them to applying to a technical high school?
There's a certain portion. I don't think it's as large as you would think. But there are, I've had quite a few students whose parents were plumbers or HVAC or carpenters or in the trades. So it kind of is an initiative for them to come to us for that. And I know I've had students that specifically came to me because their family had a plumbing business. So they were coming to us, going through, and they were going to take over the business as they got older and move through there. So there's a portion of kids that come for that.
Now, when I talk about the technical high schools, you mentioned there are 17. Do students have to apply to get in, and what is the demand like?
Yes, so there is an application process, and it is fairly competitive. The actual numbers, we probably would have to steer you towards our public relations, but there is an application process. The parents and the students fill out an application, a letter of interest they do, and then there's a selection process. There's definitely a higher amount of applicants than there are openings for the school, so it is pretty competitive.
Now, I mentioned that one of the students at Prince Tech where you teach is with us, Qahdir Muhammad. You're a senior, Qahdir, in the plumbing and heating track. So tell us what drew you to Prince Tech as well as this particular trade.
Okay, so coming into Prince Tech, my mom went to Prince Tech, right? So she kind of, recommended me go to Prince Tech, because originally I was supposed to go to New Britain High. But then my mom didn't want me to go there, so she kind of, said, let's go to Prince Tech, let's try it out, see if you like it. And I went there, I liked it, took the test, got in, and I've been there ever since, liked the school. And when it comes to plumbing, I originally went into the school not knowing what I wanted to do. So I kind of was just winging it, going to different shops, testing out each thing. I went to plumbing and I really liked it, so I stuck with it.
And so you're a senior. So tell us when you graduate, what that means for you, Qahdir. Will you be applying for apprenticeships?
Yes, I will. I will be applying for apprenticeships. I'm looking at companies right now, getting everything in order so I could apply and hopefully they'll hire me.
What has it been like with your school and with the pandemic, having to learn remotely? How does that impact you when you're learning technical education as well?
See, the thing about that is it's actually really hard, because especially for like the construction shops in particular, because we need hands-on learning to, actually learn the skills. But since, the pandemic's out, we can't really do that to the degree that we want to, because what we were originally doing, we were doing our little theory lesson in the beginning, and then we would go out on production of people's houses and we would work on houses. So now that we can't do that, it's kind of more difficult, added a more difficult curve into our learning, but I feel like we'll be able to pull through eventually. And yeah, we'll be able to get through this.
Dave Arnott, tell us more about how you've been able to navigate that for your students with what Qahdir just shared.
Sure. So there's a balance between the hands-on portion and the we call it theory, the science behind plumbing, the codes behind the plumbing trade. So we've kind of been a little heavier on the theory side right now, knowing that. So we have industry partners that we work with and advisory committees, and they are aware of the situation, and they're willing to work with that. The contractors who may hire some of our kids are willing to work around that, knowing that the kids are getting their classroom work done ahead of time. So the other thing I want to talk about is, so our students, when they graduate, if they graduate from plumbing, their schoolwork is done for plumbing, whereas a standard apprentice that has not gone to a trade school, they have to do classes at night to get their apprenticeship, to go through their apprenticeship, where our kids, it's done. So, we've just kind of adjusted, and we're leaning a little heavier on the bookwork side, the classwork side, and getting that done. And soon the students will be, coming back in, and we'll try to finish out the year strong and, find a way to benefit them the best.
And what kind of conversations have you had with employers, Dave, about the fact that with the pandemic, it has changed in the type of hands-on instruction that students like Qahdir would normally be getting?
Right. So conversations I've been having are, the understanding that, yes, they are a little lacking in the hands-on portion, and our industry partners have been very understanding about saying, we know that, we know what's going on, we're aware of the pandemic. So we're willing to work with that, right? Because they're if technically speaking, they're still getting an employee who still has background knowledge, who already has all their classes done, so they know the codes, they know the basics, they know the theory parts of the trade. So our industry partners know that they don't have to teach them that once they come on board. They just got to concentrate on the hands-on portion.
You're hearing Dave Arnott here on Where We Live, joining us by Zoom. He's head of the Plumbing and Heating Department at AI Prince Technical High School in Hartford. As we talk more about skilled trades programs in our state, when we hear about there being a shortage of skilled tradespeople in our country, this is especially important when we think about high unemployment rates in the U.S. Also with us is a student from Prince Tech, Qahdir Muhammad, a senior in the plumbing and heating track. You can join us too if you work in the skilled trades or you have a family member that works as someone as a plumber or electrician. We'd love to hear from you about the demand that you're seeing and whether there are worker shortages in our state. The number 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WMPR. Or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Now, we tried to reach some Connecticut electricians, but this should be no surprise. They're working right now, and the demand has been high from them. So we haven't been able to reach any Connecticut electricians for this show, but we understand that there, again, is a lot of demand for those types of jobs. And so, Dave, when we think about plumbing and heating, what are you hearing from employers about the workforce that's needed, and are there shortages?
That's a great question. And yes, there are definitely shortages with the younger generation. I know that the average age of a plumbing and heating technician is roughly mid 40s to early 50s is the average age. So, and I see that with our apprenticeship program that we run at night for classes at night. There's a large portion that are an older age student versus younger. There are younger students, but the numbers seem to be a little heavier on the I say over 30 age. So there are shortages of younger people coming into the trades. I know that it seems that right now everybody's working that's out there, so everybody's pretty busy. And there are people who are looking and they're saying, we don't have enough younger generation coming in. Like myself, we're all getting older and we're moving on. Like I'm no longer really in the field. I teach now, and a lot of my colleagues do the same, or they're moving into different positions. So we're looking for the younger generation to come in and grab the torch and run.
That sounds like that's a perfect time for students like Qahdir, a young person who is getting this type of education that will help him get connected to a job pretty quickly, Dave?
Yes and no. It depends on the contractors. It depends on the industry demand. We really do try to work with contractors to get our students out in the field as soon as possible. It is competitive. Like I said, there's a lot of, we have 17 schools, so there's quite a few students graduating, and, we work real hard to try to get them out the best we can. But it's great to see them all, it's a great career, and I can't say enough about it. It's, these schools are fantastic. The technical high school system has afforded me to have a great career. And I let all my students know that if you become a plumber or an electrician or, an HVAC technician, that you'll have a great career and a, steady income, and you'll always work. And, it's a great thing. And these schools afford, these schools give the kids a chance to get out there and, have a great life and a career.
You can join our conversation, 888-720-9677. Richard's calling in from Tolland. Hi, Richard.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. So you're an electrical contractor?
Yes, I am. And it's perfect segue into that you're spotlighting the problem that we're having. Electrical contractors are struggling to find electricians. One of the reasons I think that we're really struggling, not one of the reasons, but the reason we're struggling is there's, in the state of Connecticut, there's what they call a hiring ratio statute that requires us as electrical contractors, after the first 3 apprentices, to go. When we go to hire the fourth apprentice, we have to have 6 licenses, so it's a 3-to-1 ratio, and that really puts a burden on us to try to bring some of these young men and women into the trades. The on-the-job ratio is currently 1 journey person to 1 apprentice, which allows for safe, effective, hands-on field training. And that is important to these young men and women to be able to get that under the close supervision of a licensed electrician.
That's an important point that you bring up. That's an important point you bring up, Richard. Dave, I'm wondering if you can comment on what Richard shared about the hiring ratio.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that that can be an issue. Contractors are only allowed to have so many apprentices with so many licensed technicians, and that can be a problem as well as we move forward.
Richard,
and I know the state has they have made some adjustments recently, but there's still that ratio, that wall that we have to get over. It's a little difficult sometimes with that.
Richard, so tell me about the demand that you're seeing, especially during the pandemic. If there's so many jobs out there, but not enough people to do the work, how are you managing? Nope, doesn't look like Richard's there anymore, but we'd love to hear from other contractors about this workforce need here in our state. This is where we live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. My guest, Dave Arnott, will stick around. He's head of the plumbing and heating department at AI Prince Technical High School in Hartford, and a senior at Prince Tech, Qahdir Muhammad, is here as well. As we focus on a shortage of tradespeople nationwide, do you work in skilled trades or have a family member who does? We want to hear from you. Join us at 888-720-9677 or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. College for all has been embraced in our country over the last few decades, but there's been growing interest in vocational training or technical education, which doesn't require years of education and years of paying off college debt. We're talking about skilled trades programs in our state today with my guest, Dave Arnott, head of the plumbing and heating department at AI Prince Technical High School in Hartford. He's also the heating curriculum chair for the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System, and one of his students, senior at Prince Tech, Qahdir Muhammad, in the plumbing and heating trade. Dave, I wanted to ask you, tell us about some of the pathways your students have taken when they graduate. It's not necessarily that they don't go to college, but they do have this type of training and the certificates available to get into these apprenticeships. So they've got, I guess, a lot of options.
Sure. So they do. They have a wide variety of options and not only the construction trades, but any of the career paths in the technical schools. They, and I'll use plumbing as an example. They don't have to just become an apprentice for a contractor. They can go to college and they can be engineers and architects. They can go for business. Any different. There's building inspectors. There's education, there's just any. I tell the students that pretty much most career paths we can relate back to our trades.
I wanted to bring in a caller now. Erica's calling in from New Haven. Erica, you're on the show. Are you there, Erica? Nope, doesn't look like Erica's there. So I wanted to bring into the conversation now Brent Parton, who's Deputy Director of the Center on Education and Labor at New America. This is a public policy think tank. Brent, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lucy.
So it sounds like we have a robust system here in our state with career and technical education. When we look at what's happening nationwide in the skilled trades, what does the shortage look like and what industries are most impacted?
Yeah, it's a good question. And what I can say is, it does depend on where you are, but nationally, what we know is that demand remains incredibly high for many of these key occupations within the skilled trades. There's any number of reports or research that comes out each year talking about what's often referred to as a skills gap in this front. And what that tries to articulate is the idea that there's these open jobs that there's high demand for, but there are not enough people entering into those jobs with the right skills for them. I would say it's a little more complicated than that. And what we've heard today, I think, is an excellent example. And Connecticut has certainly been a leading state in many respects on the fronts of, for example, expanding apprenticeship, is that you really have to build the programs and the infrastructure if you're expecting folks to be able to connect to the jobs that exist and provide them with those foundational skills and experiences to get them there. So this idea that there's a national skills gap and that there's just no interest or people to connect to the jobs that are out there is not something we have a lot of evidence for. But what we do have evidence for is that where programs exist that are there particularly to connect young people to these great opportunities in the skilled trades, they receive high marks and support from parents and students. Voters generally give high marks to programs that support connecting young people to the skilled trades. And what I can say is they actually deliver results for young people. We know that young people who participate in career and technical educations, like Dave described, experience lower dropout rates, higher graduation rates compared to their peers, higher levels of credential attainment. So we know these programs exist, and where they do exist, they're popular. The reality is they don't exist as expansively enough as they need to across the U.S.
Mm. And is there a focus on providing this type of education, career and technical education, after high school, whether it's community college or another program, versus making sure that it's part of that middle and high school experience, Brent?
Yeah. So what I think, I love that we've been talking a lot about apprenticeship already, because what we know from the data is the average age of an apprentice in the United States is 29 years old. That's a lot of life between someone who's graduating high school and finding their way to these great opportunities. So what that signals to us is that on one hand, our schools have not, by and large, and I would put a lot of this onto our policymakers in terms of what we invest in and prioritize it. Budgets are certainly priorities, have not prioritized career and technical education versus the more traditional college path. Again, this is despite high demand or high levels of support from parents and students for these types of programs where they do exist. So what you end up with is a situation that employers are kind of sitting back and seeing what's coming to them. And on the other hand, young people are not finding these direct entry points, unlike what you've heard about today that exists, that allows young people to start this journey on apprenticeship, to start earning the credit and building some of the on-the-job learning skills before they graduate high school. So what you end up with is a misconnection between a lot of young people who are looking for a great opportunity and employers who desperately need young people into their pipeline of talent.
Hmm. What about I started this part of the show mentioning this college for all mindset, that, it's something that a lot of parents feel like, I want my child to go to college, but we see, especially now, so many students with significant debt, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to graduate with a degree and get a well-paying job, Brent. Tell us a little bit about the history of how we've seen this in our country impacting whether or not people are looking at career and technical education.
Yeah, a great question. So what we know is that parents aren't wrong to want their young people to get a college degree, because we actually show, for example, from wage data, that people who hold college degrees have consistently, over the past 3 decades, performed much better than people without them. So parents are rational at one point to be thinking this way at a high level. However, that does not mean that there aren't other paths to actually secure good paying jobs. And in fact, what we know from data now, I can tell you that if we said that all of the high school students in America, if we started them today and we looked at current trends, only about a quarter of them are going to graduate college within 6 years. And that doesn't say anything about the job they receive on the other side or the debt burden. So this prioritization of college as really a one-way track to get a good job has worked for a lot of Americans. But when we look at students of color, and particularly first-generation students, the data actually shows that these are students who are disproportionately carrying debt loads and not connecting to good paying jobs on the other side. Historically, what I can say about that, though, is we used to invest pretty heavily in career and technical education in this country. But going about 4 decades ago, we somewhat pivoted to, in a very understandable way, and I could say threw the baby out with the bathwater when we were looking at vocational education programs that were disproportionately tracking students of color into what was called the non-college path. So from an equity standpoint, was and by and large decided, we need to be able to connect young people to good jobs. We can't be tracking people like, say, these other countries do that make decisions about people's lives in their later years of high school. So what we did is significantly moved more investment and more of our policy priorities in terms of schools into that college track. The problem was we didn't take a good look at what those career and technical education programs, which are not all equal, were able to provide young people. So in fact, what we know, we have somewhat of an opposite equity problem right now. I'm sure our other guests can comment on this, is apprenticeship right now is overwhelmingly white and male. These are great paying jobs, real careers. And because we have kind of disinvested in these pathways to connect young people into these jobs, we've in many respects been able to make it harder for young people of color to access these incredible career opportunities.
You're hearing Brent Parton, Deputy Director of the Center on Education and Labor at New America, which is a public policy think tank here on Where We Live. My other guest, Dave Arnott, head of the Plumbing and Heating Department at AI Prince Technical High School in Hartford. Dave, I'm wondering if you can respond to what Brent shared, especially with the slots in apprenticeship and who are able to get them.
Sure. So it is it's tough right now. Like we've been talking about, the younger generation is not, I would say maybe quite a few years ago, it was heavier weighted for people to go into different trades and come out of the trade schools. And we have over the years leaned towards the college track for our students to go, which has made a major decrease in our apprentices coming into the trades in the state. And we're really trying to push, that isn't the only track that they have to do. The trades are a very viable track and can provide a great career. And we're hoping that increases as we go moving forward.
And are you having trouble diversifying the students that end up in these apprenticeships and these tracks? Dave, what about women?
We actually, so our program here at Prince, we have quite a few young ladies that are very interested in the trade, and it's very encouraging to see that. In years past, it's been a lot lower, but for the last few years, I've been seeing a trend moving more towards the young ladies, which these careers provide super opportunities for young women as well, especially if they move through their apprenticeships and move up the chain and become business owners, right? There's huge advantages to young women being business owners, especially in the construction trades.
Well, I want to bring in Qahdir Muhammad back into the conversation before he has to head to class. Qahdir, what are the conversations you and your classmates are having about the appeal of, again, studying plumbing versus graduating and, starting a 4-year program? Do people see the benefits of maybe going from high school right into a well-paying job versus heading right to college and maybe accruing debt?
So yeah, basically like what you were talking about, that's mainly the appeal, is that we would rather, go into work and instead of going to college and getting into debt and without even a guarantee of actually getting employment. So that's why we actually considered going into the construction, the trades, because it's easier for us to actually keep well-paying jobs, and it's actually pretty simple to learn once you get the hang of it.
Would you say that there's any stigma among your peers for the students who want to go into a skilled trade versus somebody you know of your age group who's heading off to college?
Stigma? Not exactly, really. I would kind of say like some people decide to go to college because they would rather, they want to, make their parents proud, or because they want to, you know, get a certain job that requires a degree. And others, they want to go to college because they probably don't even know about the trades, or because they don't really want to do a trade, which, I mean, that's okay. But that's really just it. When it comes to the trades, when it comes to like us, we decide like we don't really want to go to college because it's either A, we don't want that, or B, we just don't want to go back to school. Which I'm not saying school is a bad thing at all. In fact, I believe it's a good thing. But some people just don't want to go back to school, or they don't want to get college debt. And they kind of want to get guaranteed a job because, like, other people said in the show before, there's a high demand right now for the trade workers. So that's why there's a big opportunity for, especially us as young people, there's a big opportunity for us to get in and actually get a well-paying job and keep us, at work.
That's Qahdir Muhammad, a senior at Prince Tech in the plumbing and heating trade. Qahdir, it sounds like you have a bright future. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to take some calls now. Joe's calling in from Canton. Joe, go ahead.
Hi, just want to make mention that a group of trade organizations put out a questionnaire to our members, and we have hundreds of job openings available right now for apprentices. And one of the problems that we're seeing is back to the Connecticut's restrictive hiring ratio. I mean, just to give you an example, if you had 18 licenses, you could only hire 8 apprentices based on that ratio. So it is definitely a problem and a roadblock for these young men like Qahdir trying to get into the trade, and women, because we are seeing more women coming in.
Well, thank you for telling us about that, Joe. We appreciate it. Jeff's calling in from Middlebury. Jeff, go ahead. You're on Where We Live.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I've taught generator installations for about 4 years, taught technical training previously, and believe it or not, I'm now back out in the field enjoying working for myself. And I just wanted to share with young people after they get out of school, when you get hired, you're not going to get the type of job you're hoping to get doing the electrical or plumbing work. It's often crawling through attics and down in basements, and you kind of just have to go through that period of time and prove to your employer that you're a good, solid worker, you take good direction, and that you do good electrical work. And, in time, you'll get the type of work you may have imagined that you'd get. So that's one thing I wanted to share, just a positive note to those that are graduating from electrical or plumbing trade schools.
And Jeff, before you go, I know something that we haven't talked about yet, but when you are a trained electrician, and as you mentioned, going through those first years of maybe some of that work that isn't always desirable, I mean, we're talking about a lucrative career that electricians have.
Yes, and again, eventually you'll, after you prove your worth to your employer, you can make a good amount of money, but there's that period of time that you just have to prove yourself and learn the trade. Even though you've got it under your belt for your schooling, now getting out there and producing, you could say that's another story, another level that's going to take you a little period of time.
Thank you for calling in, Jeff. I want to take one more call before we head to break. Ray is driving. Hopefully you're pulled over or have a earbud in place. Ray, what did you want to share?
Yeah, actually, I'm fueling up my truck right now down here in Wallingford. But, actually, the transportation industry, as far as essential workers are concerned and workers in general, and all of us, our survival, it really does depend on the job that I do. I've been in the industry now for 27 years. My wife is also a driver, and she drove fuel tanker. She's only 5 feet tall, so she was able to overcome that and do a lot of things that a lot of men couldn't do. in her industry because she persevered through it and just did what she had to do and raised our family and, raised us all up that way because she's just a tough lady. And there's a lot of tough ladies out there working in this industry in particular. But as far as appreciation is concerned, we're very underappreciated and underpaid. We have a situation where, most of us feel as though we're just working to support our families. And it is a lot of good people out here that are very misunderstood because we have a lot of regulations in the trucking industry that cause us to have to shut down our trucks. We have no place to park. We have no place to eat, take showers half the time. The state of Connecticut does not provide you with very many truck stops. There's just not a lot of safe havens for trucks any longer, and it's increasingly getting worse. And just like I say, as far as essential workers, they forget about us very quickly. And I'm back in my truck. They forget about us very quickly.
Well, Ray, we appreciate you sharing that with us. We occasionally have the governor on our show. We'll be sure to raise some of your concerns with him. Again, when we talk about skilled tradespeople, also, they are essential workers working through this pandemic, and we appreciate the work you're doing, Ray. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I said goodbye to Qahdir, but I also want to thank Dave Arnott, Plumbing and Heating Department Head at AI Prince Technical High School, for joining us today as we talk about skilled trades and the importance of career and technical education in our country. Staying with us is Brent Parton, Deputy Director of the Center on Education and Labor at New America. And coming up after the break, we're going to hear more about the state program at the Department of Labor to help with apprenticeships. Back after a short break. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Will the Biden administration commit to investments in career and technical education? Now, the president's pick for U.S. Education Secretary, Dr. Miguel Cardona, says it's important. Cardona, Connecticut's education commissioner, graduated from a technical high school in Meriden. At a Senate confirmation hearing, Cardona talked about the need to create pathways from secondary school to higher education or job training. And he also talked about keeping costs of post-secondary education down by allowing high school students to take college-level courses. Before we hear from the State Department of Labor about their apprenticeship program, Brent Parton, I wanted to ask you, with President Biden's pick for Education Secretary, how do you expect to see a shift with the focus on investing in technical education?
Yeah, I see a couple really important things. One, it's really important to hear Secretary Cardona share that perspective, because it goes back to this idea we have not prioritized, and I go back to our policymakers have not prioritized investments in career and technical education. But I think here's the more important thing to listen for. We have long thought about vocational or career or technical education as something other than college. The reality today is that for most jobs in our economy, and for even a lot of skilled trades occupations, there's an opportunity to earn debt-free college credit and really use it as a foundation for multiple options for a career for a young person. Dave mentioned earlier, young people can CTE classes, can take skilled trades, hands-on learning exposure. They might choose to go on into architecture or engineering. So what I think is particularly promising about what the Biden administration will bring to this conversation is breaking down the traditional silo between career and technical education or college, and the recognition that we need more affordable, debt-free paths to and through education, because college itself has become so much less of a guarantee for being able to get a good job in our labor market, that young people who are more prone and want hands-on experience, you need paid work experience. Most entry-level jobs today, believe it or not, require some form of work experience. That's what's really exciting about the directions they're headed. And I think they see K-12 community colleges, but also the Department of Labor, seeing more coordination across education and labor to invest and expand what I would call the apprenticeship infrastructure in the country.
Well, let's hear from the Connecticut Department of Labor, Todd Birch, on the phone with us. He's apprenticeship manager. Todd, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on. This is a wonderful program so far.
So tell us about the apprenticeship program that you help run in Connecticut, and what does that mean for both employers and young people, or even people that are starting a new career?
Sure. So the apprenticeship program is, we are the administrators of every employer's apprenticeship program in the state of Connecticut. So we help design the onboarding processes for all various occupations. Qahdir has a wonderful future ahead of him. There's no question about that. It's very likened to what we understand as the college system. He right now will be graduating high school, but occupationally, he basically will have his bachelor's degree in the plumbing occupation. His next step, very linear, is to get enrolled into an apprenticeship program for his employer and the Department of Labor's apprenticeship program to design a bridge to professional practice for him, to get the skills that he's learned in an academic sphere and bring it to practice. And after that set of time, Qahdir will be going into getting his license for the state of Connecticut and being a journey person. So that's an example of what the apprenticeship programs do in Connecticut and multiple occupations. And it's been a very long-standing program, very successful program, and we look forward to more partnerships with more employers.
For years now, I feel like we've been hearing about a skills gap in our workforce, especially when we think about manufacturing, Todd, and there has been more of a focus on how to bridge that gap between high school and community college. So I'm wondering, are you seeing improvements with connecting people to these types of jobs? Are there enough people interested with all the jobs that are available?
Yeah, it's a two-part question. So my partners at the Department of Education and also the community colleges and the private institutions in manufacturing have had a very large focus on where they're going to get their next workforce. And the conversations that we're having with educators, STEM education has not a specific occupational focus. As Brent has said before, and Dave as well, career technical education combined with the principles of STEM education, especially on the mathematics portion of it, gets people into a thought process of manufacturing to become the next employees or going into certificate programs at the community colleges specifically for manufacturing. So we've been working extremely hard on this for the last few years, and it's been a hyper-focus specifically for the last 2 years. And we've been relatively successful, but there are many more openings right now, and we're trying to get people more aware of these opportunities.
Elizabeth's calling in from Wethersfield. Elizabeth, do you have a question for Todd?
Yeah, I have a question in general. This program is really timely. My husband is looking to make a career change into plumbing, and we just don't see a lot of information out there on the state's website of how to do this. It's all geared towards, the younger people graduating from tech high schools. What about someone who didn't graduate from a tech high school? We're seeing apprenticeship job ads saying, prefer some school, and then we see the schools saying they're apprenticeship programs, and so can you enter the schools without being an apprentice? And so this is sort of like this catch-22 we're in, and we're really unclear on how to move forward for his desired career change.
Mm-hmm. Todd, what can you tell me?
Sure. So Dave Arnott right now teaches the day school, so to speak, for high school students. The vocational technical school system, or CTECS as it's referred to, does have a very robust adult evening apprenticeship course offering specific for plumbing, electrical, so on and so forth. They've had it for decades now, and I would really have you look into starting to get into those classes that are going on right now. That's a very good step. The answer to the question of do you have to be an apprentice to go into these classes? No, you do not. But as you're starting, just like Qahdir has gone through freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year to become very well-knowledge plumbing and heating, that's where at the evening courses where any individual can enroll into those programs and start to get the same type of education.
Thank you for that answer for Elizabeth. Todd, I have to ask you, a couple of contractors called in and talked about this problem with the hiring ratio. Can you talk about how the state is trying to address this?
Sure. So the hiring ratio is in statute with the Department of Consumer Protection and Licensing. But the one advantage that we have as the Department of Labor, we have a process called ratio relief for apprentices. So I'd like to, for some of the contractors that are listening on the phone, please contact the Connecticut Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship Training so you can apply for ratio relief to augment some of your apprentices possibly. You have a subcommittee that reviews your application and will give a ruling upon what they think it can be some wiggle room, so to speak, for augmenting the amount of apprentices.
Mm. And Todd, Alicia shared with us on Twitter that her sister is in the welding and electrical trades, but finding that she's treated poorly and often harassed sexually, worried about finding places for apprenticeship. So what would you tell her?
That's an interesting ask. I haven't run into that necessarily. We do have, that's portion of the apprenticeship program is to come back to the Department of Labor with that type of initiative. There has been opportunities, especially in welding, especially for women. There's been some really wonderful opportunities, and I know quite a few women that have been in these occupations that have done quite well and have not experienced that, unfortunately.
Brent Parton, I wanted to go to you to end the show. We just have a couple of minutes, but when we talk about how to make skilled trades more welcoming for everyone, what are your closing thoughts?
I think first off, it starts with young people, where I go back to this. There's an old adage in the apprenticeship space that people find their ways to apprenticeships through the FBI. That means friends, brothers, and in-laws. And what that means is where you have people who have family members or uncles or aunts who are in these trades, that's how you find your way to these opportunities. If we don't build really deliberate connections between our really high quality apprenticeship programs that we have in the state of Connecticut and the rest of the country into our high schools, we're never going to be able to reach and engage what is the most diverse generation of young people. And they're looking for these other opportunities. Their parents are looking for these opportunities. So it starts, in my view, on meeting young people where they are, and where they are is in their high schools. What we have lacked in this country is what I would call a true youth apprenticeship system, in a sense that in Germany and Switzerland, 50 to 70% of high school graduates enter apprenticeship programs. In the United States, that age is much higher. So what we can truly build is we have a lot of young people who are starting college classes and college coursework before they graduate. We need an early college infrastructure to connect our young people to apprenticeship opportunities, because that is where the diverse young folks are that need these opportunities. But the other thing I'll say, per this other question that was mentioned, we need to also make investments and prioritize equity within programs by ensuring that people who are the trainers, the mentors, who are on the front lines of really building the skills of apprentices are more comfortable, but also more importantly have the awareness and ability to work with young people that might not look like them or might not have their backgrounds. They're true educators. They're the people that makes this system work. These are people, this is where these ratio issues come in, that one-to-one learning. We need to make sure we're providing resources and training to the people who are training the trainees. And I think that is critically important for the diversity question, because it's not just about getting young people into the opportunities, it's making sure they're successful once they're there.
Brent Parton, thank you so much. Deputy Director of the Center on Education and Labor at New America. It's a public policy think tank. And thanks to Todd Birch, Apprenticeship Manager for Connecticut Department of Labor. We'll share some links on our website, wnpr.org/where we live. We'll also tweet them out for listeners who are looking for more information about that program. Today's show, produced by Carmen Baskoff. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Thanks for your calls and for listening.